Hello there. Very good evening and welcome to Let's Talk Politics on this Saturday evening. It is the first day of the month of May. Of course, it's Labor Day. Uh, and of course, today is a big day for workers across the world where they reflect on where they are as a group and what is necessary, what is needed for their improvement as a collective. I want to talk a little bit this evening about the history of the People's Progressive Party Civic. Well, the People's Progressive Party in the first instance, and the fight for workers' right and for workers across this country for many, many years. The People's Progressive Party Civic, formed way back in 1950, was founded on the basis of the working class, the struggle for workers. Dr. Chetty Jagan, the former president, the late president, you know, when he founded the PPP, and even before the PPP was founded, when you had the Political Affairs Committee prior to 1950, the struggle was really for the working class and to support workers. So when you see occasions like these, it resonates with the People's Progressive Party Civic, a party that has always been at the forefront of the struggle to ensure workers' rights are protected, to ensure that workers are treated fairly, and to ensure that workers benefit from whatever is there to offer to them, whether it's training, whether it's fair pay, whatever it is. And I want to build tonight's program on the basis of the message released for Labor Day 2021 on behalf of the People's Progressive Party Civic. And as you're aware, the Labor Day celebrations are usually marked by rallies across the country and marches around the city, around the various parts of the country, and then it culminates with rallies where trade unionists, reflect on the year that gone by, and of course how they want to move forward and so forth. It's unfortunate that this year, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we were unable to have those events happening. However, while COVID has dampened the observances or the celebrations, or for want of a better term, the reality is that the People's Progressive Party Civic as a government continues to keep the interest of workers at the forefront, continue to make the interest of workers a priority. And the records are there to speak to this. If one is to look to during the APNU AFC term in office, persons were fired helter skelter all over the place. You had sugar workers fired, the CSOs fired, and so forth. And there was no respect for workers' rights. There was no collective bargaining. There was no, matter of fact, workers were promised 20 and 30 and 40% salary increases. Sugar workers were promised significant salary increases. But when the coalition went into office, what did they do? They fired the sugar workers and they closed the sugar estates. Public servants were promised, I think, 20% salary increases. What did they do when they got into office? They instead increased their own salaries by 50 and 100%. And Nagamutu said to public servants that you guys need to be patient. Harman says there is no apology. You had the then Labor Minister Keith Scott using derogatory statements to describe teachers and to describe workers generally. You had the Education Minister, the teachers had to take to the street and protest. One of the current MPs, for that matter, with the APNU AFC was the General Secretary at that time. I think she still is the General Secretary of the Guyana Teachers Union, who had to go into the streets to demonstrate, to protest, to demand basic things like uniform allowance and their salary increases. The People's Progressive Party Civic, on the other hand, having returned to office on August 2nd, has rehired several hundreds of sugar workers, on course to rehire sugar workers who lost their jobs, who were suffering, has rehired CSOs, has created opportunities, employment opportunities for not only young people, but for Guyanese at large. So the PPP has a history, has always been a party that demonstrates its interest and its love for workers and to ensure that they benefit from what the government has to offer. And if one is to look at the efforts being made since the PPP took office just 9 months ago, and the government continues to work assiduously to ensure that workers are a priority, that their lives and the conditions of their lives are improved. You have the 20,000 scholarships that are available. If one is to look at that, for example, what will you see? You will see a situation where um, those opportunities are also going to many workers, to children of workers. It is open across the board. The PPP has recognized the importance. And if you want us to look at even the statement of His Excellency, the President, and I had a little quote here that I wanted to share that from His Excellency's address to workers today. And he said, and I quote, "Our workers are most indispensable to national development. They provide the brain and muscle of our economy. Workers are the prime force in transforming our resources into wealth. They help drive and sustain economic growth and are the protagonists of human development. Without workers, our economy would grind to a halt." And this is coming from the very highest level. There is a recognition from the very top, from His Excellency, the importance of workers, the importance of the working class. And like I said, the PPP has a history of struggling and supporting the working class in this country. So on this Labor Day, as we celebrate, as we observe Labor Day 2021, it is important for one to reflect, for one to look at where workers are, and for workers themselves to reflect. I want to say, and I can say this without fear of any contradiction, that you have a friend in the People's Progressive Party Civic. The workers have a friend, have a party in office, a government that stands ready to work to ensure that the living standards, the working conditions, the pay, and everything of workers are improved. It's a process. It's not something that can happen overnight. It's not something that's going to happen in a matter of weeks or so. It is a process. What is important is that from the government you have seen a commitment from the People's Progressive Party civic government, from His Excellency right down. You've seen a commitment to ensuring that workers' rights are protected, that workers' interests are given priority, and that you have a government that is focused on improving and bettering not only the lives of workers, not only the conditions under which they work, but also providing the kind of incentives, the opportunities, and the environment that is conducive for them to grow, for them to develop. So when one is to reflect, and it's I keep saying this, it's a simple comparison to make. It's a simple comparison to make when one looks at what workers went through in the last 5 years, and already what workers are benefiting from. If we were to take the simple measures implemented by the PPC government since taking office in the interest of workers, I know we were hearing the big cry last year about workers, public servants not getting a salary increase. But one has to recognize that the People's Progressive Party civic government, having passed the emergency budget in 2020, one of the first things that were done and what that budget allowed for is for a national payout, COVID-19 relief payout, which benefited workers. There were a host of other uh, things that were put in place to ensure that workers themselves benefit from not just the pay, because a lot of people were working from home, were working just a few days. Public servants I'm speaking of, some of them not working at all during the pandemic, but they were still receiving their salaries. There was a payout, another payout close to the holidays that the government granted, the one-off payout. So there were benefits that were brought to workers, even in a situation where you had an emergency budget, even in a situation where uh, that we're still in the COVID-19 pandemic. Opportunities were created, benefits were brought to workers. The removal of VAT from basic items benefit workers. It benefit workers across the board, private sector, public sector. 14% off your food basket, because what we had essentially is a coalition that had what they had done is to really put on 14% on your entire food basket, because you had basic items. You had basic items that didn't attract VAT previously, were attracting VAT. You had VAT on water. You had VAT on electricity. You had VAT on some medical supplies. It is after pressure, I think they backpedaled on VAT on private education. So workers, like every other Guyanese, were facing even more pressure, tremendous pressure as a result of the actions of the APNU AFC. But the working class people were the ones suffering the most, because those are people who were working a basic salary, who were trying to build a life, who were trying to provide for their children, to give them an education, and maybe to own a home, to own a vehicle, and to progress. What the APNU AFC did to workers during that period is to add additional burden on them by putting VAT on basic items, by firing people, by doing all sorts of things that are anti-poor, anti-working class. Luckily, the people of this country would have spoken on March 2nd, and they made a firm decision to say, no more are we going to allow a government that will abuse our people, that will abuse our workers. The workers themselves turned out in their numbers and voted overwhelmingly to remove the APNU AFC from office, because that was an elitist group that was more focused on how they can help themselves, how they can help their cronies, those close to them, and they had absolutely no care, no consideration whatsoever for the working class people of this country. So workers themselves had to take a decision, like every other Guyanese, to remove them. And I want to say that the People's Progressive Party Civic has recognized the importance. And look, it is simple. It is the APNU AFC that dismantled the Labor Ministry. The, the fact that the People's Progressive Party Civic, as soon as it assumed office, matter of fact, it's a manifesto promise that we made, that we were going to re-establish the Labor Ministry. And it was done. There's an entire ministry to deal with workers' issues. And that is because the government places heavy importance on workers and their welfare. It is for that reason you have that ministry reestablished, so that workers who have grievances, those grievances, there is a legal mechanism that has been established with adequate recognition. That is the important part. Even though there was a legal mechanism in place, the kind of recognition, the kind of attention that was necessary to focus on workers' rights was absent. The People's Progressive Party Civic made a promise to reestablish the Labor Ministry. We have done that. Minister Joe Hamilton runs that ministry, and on a daily basis, he deals with a number of issues affecting workers. So one has to recognize that on this Labor Day, as we as we celebrate, as we reflect, as we commemorate the efforts of workers around the world. And any sensible government will recognize the importance of the labor force. The labor force is really the driver of an economy. That is the reality. The labor force, whether in the private sector, whether in the public sector, workers are really the drivers of an economy. And hence the statement that I read from His Excellency earlier, where he spoke specifically of the importance of workers in national development, in economic growth. So, the whole issue of workers has now taken prominence once again, having been placed on the back burner, having been ignored, workers having been ignored, cast aside, and all sorts of things by the coalition for the last 5 years. On this Labor Day, we can reflect as workers all across the country and we can tap ourselves on the back to say that we on March 2nd last year, we made a decision to replace a cabal that had no interest in workers with one that has placed the interest and welfare of workers at the forefront. I mean, we recognize that there's lots more to be done. You know, we haven't reached where we would want to be. There's a lot more to be done. The important thing is there is a recognition of the importance of workers. There is a recognition that there is more that needs to be done, and that importantly, there is evidence of a deliberate attempt, a deliberate effort to ensure that the lives and welfare of workers are taken care of. So we have started, the process has started. At least we have a starting point where workers' interests are being placed at the forefront and efforts are being made to address your concerns. One of the things that this government recognized, and I mentioned it earlier, is the burden that was brought on workers. And I mentioned some of them. I didn't go through the school children cash grant. I didn't go through all the other opportunities that are being created for workers, the opportunities for workers to improve themselves, respect for the collective bargaining agreement, because, you know, the big hue and cry about the government didn't put anything in the budget for pay increases for public servants. And I think the vice president right now addressed that issue and highlighted the fact that there was monies in the budget. Well, we couldn't announce that we're going to give 5 or 10% without having any discussion with the union. If you don't do that, then you defeat the purpose of the collective bargaining. So it is for that reason it wasn't, it wasn't done. But you're seeing and you're hearing a lot of politics being played. We've seen for the last 5 years workers being used as political tools. What we have now is a situation where things are changing and things are changing rapidly. Like I highlighted the fact that the People's Progressive Party Civic was formed on the basis of representing workers' rights. It was formed on that basis. So there is no question, there is absolutely no question as to where, how the interest of workers, for that matter, lies. And that is why I went back to just to give you a little background, maybe, of how the PPP was formed and what was the basis it was formed on. It was formed on a basis to fight for the rights of workers, even before the PPP, when you had the Political Affairs Committee, um, and then you had, the it formed actually out of a merger of the British Guyana Labour Party that was focused on labor, and of course the Political Affairs Committee. And and if one is to understand the basis on which even the Political Affairs Committee was formed, the intention was to represent the rights of workers. And and the PP has always been a working class party. The PP has always been a party that looks out for the interest, for the rights of workers, for the working class, always focuses on how we can improve the lives of the working class people of this country. Every single budget from 1992, if one is to look at the budget, the basis of those budgets, they're all focused on improving the lives of working class people. Always a pro-poor approach, always a working class approach. And look at the benefits. They're all there. Look at the benefits. Look at the injections in the bauxite company and the efforts by the PPC government to save that industry, to ensure that jobs were protected. The same thing with with Gaisuko. Look at the efforts to preserve Gaisuko. We didn't throw up our hands and say, look, the bauxite company is going under, let us just allow it to go and forget about the jobs. We didn't do the same thing when we look at the sugar industry, and we try to preserve jobs there as well. So the PUP has always been a party that, like I said, that has been working in the interest of people. So on this Labor Day, I wanted to spend some time to talk a little bit on this Labor Day. I want to take the opportunity to wish all our workers happy Labor Day. And of course, I want you to understand that you have a friend in the People's Progressive Party Civic, a friend in the government that is willing and ready and stand prepared to work with you to ensure that your rights are protected, to ensure that your lives are improved, and to ensure that the conditions under which you work are improved. You can rest assured that as a government, we will continue to protect the rights of workers, we will continue to promote the interest of workers, we will continue to create opportunities for workers, and to ensure that workers, the working class, are treated fairly, and that the working class are not told to be patient while salaries are being doled out to what was happening, similar to what was happening under the APNU AFC, where Granger and his gang took huge salary increases and telling workers, to sit back and you're not going to benefit from anything. The Minister of Labor, Honorable Joseph Hamilton, has been across this country, the length and breadth of this country, working in the interest of workers, working to promote the interest to ensure workers are treated fairly, workers are protected. He has been all across the country. I attempted to get him to come tonight to talk on this program. I was unable to do so because I understand that he is out and about, as usual, trying to ensure that the rights of our workers are protected, that they are treated fairly, whether in the private sector or the public sector. So, again, to the workers across the country, I want to wish you happy Labor Day, and I want to encourage you to remain focused and to recognize that you have where your friends are, and you can see that in the PPP, and of course, we'll continue to work with you. I wanted to examine quickly a couple of other issues, and I want to revisit the issue that I discussed 2 nights ago involving Amanza Desir regarding Indo-Guyanese and supporters of the PPP. I raised a statement, and I'm still awaiting condemnation from all those who love to make the first jump. All those organizations, many of them are now silent. You're not hearing a squeak from them. We're a sitting member of parliament. A sitting member of parliament is going to make comments, derogatory comments about supporters of PPP. And it's not just that she made the comments by passing, it is comments that she made that has strong racial undertones, where she's talking about one segment of society, being referring to Indo-Guyanese being, mentally lazy, that they're in bondage, and all sorts of things. Could you imagine? Could you imagine a representative of a political party that has been fooling their supporters for the last for 5 months rather, during just after the elections? A political party that refused to even show its supporters their SOPs as they claim they won the elections. A political party that has been doling out lies upon lies to their supporters, trying to convince them that they won an election. A political party that did absolutely nothing for their supporters, and many of them still supporting them. And you have the audacity, you have the gall to look at supporters of the People's Progressive Party Civic and say to them that they're mentally lazy and that they're somehow in bondage. Unbelievable. It is unbelievable because, you know why it's unbelievable? It is unbelievable for the mere fact that many of the PNC APNU supporters left them and voted PPP in 2020. So if these people were not in bondage and these people didn't recognize how mentally enslaved people like Amanza Desir are, they're in mental slavery. I think Harman and the others have them so crazy that they're trapped. So they believe what they're sold. It is not the same thing on the side of the PPP. The PPP has always been a party that has lived up and continues to live up to its promises. Everything that has been promised in the manifesto, and you can go back from 1992, start from 1992. Every promise the People's Progressive Party Civic made to the people of this country, we have fulfilled. We have fulfilled. What the APNU AFC did and the PNC, the usual trick is to promise make lofty promises. But guess what? Ask them, ask them how many of those promises they have fulfilled. Ask them how many. The PPC, let's take this current term in office, promised 20,000 online scholarships. The rollout process for that has started. Thousands of Guyanese have already applied. Thousands of Guyanese. The PPP promised to remove VAT from all the VAT that the coalition put on basic items. That has done. Reversed a total of almost 400 fees and taxes were all reversed or removed. It's a promise that we fulfill. On course to provide the 50,000 house lots. On course to provide the 50,000 jobs. Has provided resources to all Guyanese during this COVID-19 pandemic. Every single has promised to realize a number of transformational projects. A number of transformational projects, including returning to the Mila Falls, including the Demerara Harbor Bridge. These are all things that the PPP has promised, and the PPP is on course to ensure that they are achieved. So we don't need to play dirty politics. We don't need to raise bait like the PNC. We don't need to try to divide people. We don't need to lie to the people of this country, because our record speaks for itself. The evidence is there. Move across this country and you will see the tremendous development that are taking place. You will see the tremendous development that is taking place all across this country. Every single region, you're seeing development. You're seeing improvements in the lives of people. Our children, despite the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic, our education minister has been working tirelessly 7 days per week to ensure that education is delivered to our children in this COVID-19 environment. The Minister of Agriculture has been across this country ensuring that farmers are given the necessary support that they require, ensuring that market opportunities are created, ensuring that whatever support is necessary, not only for farmers, but for communities as well. He has been working with the rice industry. He's working to turn around Gaisuko to ensure Gaisuko returns to some level of profitability, and that workers can retain their jobs, and those who were fired by the PNC can return to work. The Minister of Housing has been across this country, distributing already over 4,000 house lots in just 9 months were allocated to persons. Hundreds upon hundreds of transports and titles were distributed. That could have been done a long time ago. Improving water supply to people. Efforts are being made to improve the electricity supply, the road networks across this country, the bridges. The local government minister has been in all the regions trying to ensure that the local government organs are functioning to its maximum capacity, so that they can provide the kind of benefits and services that people need. So you can go across the country. His Excellency himself has been moving across this country. The Minister of Sport, and I can go on and on all night tonight to talk about what the ministers of this government have been doing. They are not sitting ducks like the PNC. APNU had a bunch of sitting ducks as ministers who were just sitting in their offices and were saying absolutely nothing to the people. We're not going out there to find out what are the issues facing the people. We're not providing the people with any sort of services. Matter of fact, the people were complaining that many of them, after the campaign, after the elections, they couldn't contact them because they changed their numbers. All the ministers of this government have remained with the numbers that we knew. We all knew when we were dealing with them. And they are contactable, they are accessible. And they're in the fields. And you don't really need to make an appointment to see a minister of this government, because they're always in the fields. You can meet them anywhere, at any point. They are always in the regions across this country, talking to the people, listening to their concerns. As one person said to me, the ministers of the government are now making appointments to meet with the people, because they're going to you to try to meet with you, instead of you having to come and wait to meet with them. So the People's Progressive Party civic means business. So when you hear the lies, misinformation, and these tactics to divert from people like Desir and the others, ignore them. You have to ignore them. But we also have to call them out. When they start with the racist rants, the racism, we have to call them out. We have to expose them. And I again I hope Guyanese will condemn this action, even those who are supporting the PNC or who had supported the PNC previously. This derogatory description and explanation and utterances about supporters of the People's Progressive Party Civic should be condemned and must be condemned. Secondly, the actions and the utterances of Joseph Harman must be condemned. Joseph Harman is trying to gaslight his supporters. He is trying to incite his supporters to create chaos and to create confusion. But guess what? The people he thinks he's inciting, they are smarter than him. That is why he's failed to get numbers to come out on the day when the Chief Justice ruled, because people recognize that it is a time for them to move forward. They are seeing they have a government that is willing to help them, to guide them along the way as they progress, as they develop themselves, and they have absolutely no time with Harman and his rhetoric, his racist, divisive rhetoric. They are more focused on progressing as a people. And finally, I want to say that there has to be condemnation of the attacks on the Chief Justice, first as a woman, and secondly as a professional. All Guyanese, all of us need to condemn dastardly statements coming from the APNU AFC. We must condemn them, and it's sad that the women in that organization, in that movement, are silent. Many of them are actually jumping on the bandwagon to attack the Chief Justice, because she ruled fairly. Sometimes not every ruling will be in our favor. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. But that doesn't give you the right to attack and assassinate the character of someone just because you don't agree with what they say. So again, I want to close here this evening, and I want to close by saying to our workers, to wish our workers all the best on this um, Labor Day. The day is almost over, and I trust that you had a peaceful day. You had a day of reflection, a day of reckoning, a day of thinking and charting the way forward as you go forward, maybe in the next year. I also want to use the opportunity to encourage all Guyanese to, if you're 18 years and above, please take the COVID-19 vaccine. It's safe. I took the vaccine. Many other people, 100 and something thousand people took the vaccine, and we haven't heard a single occasion where a Guyanese died as a result of this vaccine. Matter of fact, globally, we haven't heard any deaths as a result of this vaccine. So I want to encourage you, if you reach the age, please take the COVID vaccine. It's available. It will protect you, it will save your life, and it will protect your family. And if you're going out, remember to mask up, sanitize, and stay safe distance from others. This is where I wrap things up. I want to thank you very much for being part of this program. We're going to be back with you tomorrow evening. Michael Gordon will be with you to continue Let's Talk Politics. Until then, I say thanks for watching and have a good rest of the evening. Happy Labor Day to all.